ChatGPT can now search the web far better than before, thanks to this week's major update with us getting ChatGPT search. So, OpenAI wrote in an announcement this past week ChatGPT can now search the web in a much better way than before. You can get fast, timely answers with links to relevant web sources, which you would have previously needed to go to a search engine for. This blends the benefits of a natural language interface with the value of up-to-date sports scores, news, stock quotes, and more. Some key features of this new search feature include natural language queries that automatically trigger web searches when needed, direct links to source material and citations, specialized displays for categories like weather, stocks, sports, news, and maps, real-time information access for current events, scores, and market data, and integration with major news publishers, including AP, Reuters, Financial Times, and others. The rollout of ChatGPT search is going to be tiered based on your subscription type. ChatGPT Plus and Team users have immediate access right now. In the coming weeks, enterprise and education users will get access to this. But if you're a free user, you're going to have to wait for months. In the coming months, eventually, you will get access to this feature. So, Paul, I want to talk a lot about what this means for Google. But
Mhm.
first, can you just share your initial impressions of search within ChatGPT now? Like, how useful do you find these new capabilities?
Yeah, my impression is that they're going to change the way you use ChatGPT. Honestly, so I think the user experience is really solid.
Mm,
When you choose it, you can choose a search. So if you haven't tried it yet, you can actually click search, or ChatGPT just intuits that you're conducting something where search would be valuable, and it automatically will use search. So I personally tested on like planning a trip into Florida, this fall. And so just said like planning a trip to Florida, specifically the city. And it immediately gave a very logical structure. It pulled in pictures. It had a
mm,
getting there header, a where to stay, must see attractions, activities, dining, weather, tips. So all this, like all the structure that we're used to with ChatGPT, where it automatically kind of curates these outlines, but now it had inline citations. I tried one for, I think this was like Friday morning or something, or Saturday. Give me a summary of the Cleveland Cavaliers game
mm,
from last night, and it pulled in Reuters and Talk Sport articles. It summarized it, but then linked right to those articles. I tried one just out of curiosity. It's like, when was the last time the Cleveland Cavaliers started 6-0? And it pulled in Wikipedia, NBA, and then it actually pulled in real-time stories from Reuters and the New York Post from the previous night's games.
mm.
I tried one like, why are tech stocks down? So I was just like experimenting with it. And my overall take is I really enjoy the no ad experience. Um, I went over to Perplexity and I tried some of those same searches again. And honestly, like Perplexity started to feel a bit obsolete to me, more from the user interface. And it feels very cluttered all of a sudden, which, I mean, if you're used to Google, Google's cluttered as is. So Perplexity didn't seem like that big of a difference, I guess. But when you have this totally clean interface with no ads or anything, Perplexity just felt different to me all of a sudden, and not as modern and clean. And that's before Perplexity infuses ads, which we know they're working on. And
Mhm.
so that was kind of like an initial reaction. But to go back to, you had mentioned kind of like the bigger picture here about like Google and search. I actually was like, I think you and I talked about this in March 2024. I didn't go back and look for the episode where we would have touched on it, but Sam Altman did an interview with Lex Friedman. It was episode 419 of Lex Friedman's podcast. We'll put the link in the show notes. And I remembered, like, as soon as I saw this last week, I was like, wait, what was that Lex interview where he talked about this? I remember noting it at the time. So anyway, I went back to the transcript, and again, we'll put the link in. And Lex asked Sam specifically about search in March 2024. So I think it's important for people to realize, like, this isn't a new thing. OpenAI has been thinking about search and how they would handle it for years, and Sam has openly talked about it for a while. So in that interview, Lex said, like, how are people going to access information? People show up to GPT as a starting point. So is OpenAI really going to take on this thing that Google started 20 years ago? And Sam said, I find that boring. I mean, if the question is, will we build a better search engine than Google? then sure, we should go, people should use the better product. But I think that would be to understate what this can be. So again, kind of quoting him, Google shows you 10 blue links, well, 13 ads and then 10 blue links, kind of taking a shot at Google. And that's one way to find information. But the thing that's exciting to me is not that we could go build a better copy of Google search, but that maybe there's some better way to help people find and act and synthesize information. Actually, I think ChatGPT is that for some use cases, and hopefully will make it be like that for a lot more use cases. He went on to say, but I don't think it's that interesting to say, how do we do a better job of giving you 10 ranked web pages to look at than Google does? Maybe it's really interesting to go say, how do we help you get the answer, the information you need? How can we help create that in some cases, synthesize that in others, or point you to it in yet others? But a lot of people have tried to just make a better search engine than Google, and it is a hard technical problem. It is a hard branding problem. It is a hard ecosystem problem. I don't think the world needs another copy of Google. But then he does talk about integrating the ChatGPT, and he says that's cooler. Like if we could build search right into it, as you might guess, he said we are interested in how to do that well. The intersection of large language models plus search. I don't think anyone has cracked the code yet. I would love to go do that. And then Lex said, well, what about ads? Have you thought about how to monetize it? And he said, and this is important, this kind of gives a preview of how they may not go the direction Perplexity is going to go and the way Google is built on. Says, I kind of hate ads as an aesthetic choice. I think ads needed to happen on the internet for a bunch of reasons to get it going, but it's a momentary industry. The world is richer now. I like that people pay for ChatGPT and know the answers they're getting are not influenced by advertisers. I'm sure there's an ad unit that makes sense for language models, and I'm sure there's a way to participate in the transaction stream in an unbiased way. But basically, he's just not a fan of ads at all.
Yeah.
And he really wants to build their business model based on subscriptions instead. And then the other, a couple points of context here so was it in June, I think, of this year, June or July, they introduced Search GPT prototype. So
Right.
again, we've known this was coming. How exactly they executed it wasn't clear. But even back then, they showed how they were thinking about it. Said, we're testing Search GPT, a prototype with new search features designed to combine the strength of AI models with information from the web to give you fast and timely answers. So, and then like one of the key reasons, so getting into like, why does search matter? Like, why is this important? You have to remember that like large language models have a cutoff date on their knowledge base. So GPT 4.0's knowledge cutoff, like when it was trained, is October 2023. So the data in 4.0, when it's not connected to the internet, it doesn't know anything about the world from the last 13 months, basically. And so it was pre-trained on the data up to October 2023. So what the benefits of search in the LLM is access to real-time information. In theory, and so far research has proved this out, a reduction of hallucinations. So you can have greater accuracy and reliability if you can vet the outputs with real-time data and search information. It improves the potential for personalization and localization of results. So, a lot of times that's not being infused into these LLMs where, Mike and I may have the same experience, even though we're different people and maybe in different locales. And it also enables the verticalization of information of these LLMs to specific industries or domains. So imagine in like law, if you don't have the latest legal cases, or in healthcare, if you don't have the latest research or reports, or in sports, finance, stocks, all of these verticals require up-to-date information that these models don't have inherently. They're not traditionally a search engine like Google, where you're used to getting the most updated information. And then my final thought here is just like the concerns or weaknesses. This isn't all like sunshine and rainbows. Like this does open up a greater potential for misinformation. Once people figure out how to kind of trick these systems, the information they get to be indexed and found can become an issue. So we don't know how reliable they are. There was a tweet I saw from Emily Bender, who's a University of Washington professor of linguistics and somebody I follow pretty closely on Twitter. And she was saying like one of the biggest challenges to this is people come to believe these things are accurate. So one of the beauties of what Google has done for 20 years is generally, get really good at presenting you accurate information.
Mhm.
and you can kind of trust it and then verify sources and things like that. But she was saying, we don't know how reliable these things are, how much they hallucinate. And the problem is that, and this is to quote her, a system that is right 95% of the time is arguably more dangerous than one that is right 50% of the time. People will be more likely to trust the output and likely less able to fact check the 5%. So if people start assuming that search and ChatGPT is right all the time,
Mhm.
and they don't even click on the links, and maybe its error rate is only 5 or 10%, that's a significant error rate. And that
Right.
can affect, how people use the system and how they trust it. Bias and manipulation become a thing. Again, think about search and how there's the shadow industry of basically just figuring out the algorithms and trying to stay ahead of it. So you already have people trying to figure out how to game these algorithms. It sounds like they're largely using Bing's index, not their own index of the web.
Yep.
So now you have SEOs, that are probably racing to figure out how to game the Bing algorithms to get injected into these search results.
Yep.
Creates an echo chamber because they're going to license, like a lot of the stuff that's going to get surfaced is going to be licensed from specific sources like a Reuters who are willing to do a deal. And let's say politically or religiously or whatever, you want to throw in there, they do deals that heavily lean toward one side or the other. Now all of a sudden, or geographically, government wise, now all of a sudden the results lean in those directions because that's who they did licensing deals with. So again, there's all kinds of challenges around this as well. So on the surface, awesome tech,
Yep.
great user experience. It's clean. I like it. There's about a bunch of other macro level stuff going on here though.
And just as a very small example of what this could mean for marketers, like I just typed in, what are the top AI tools today? And it says, as of November 2024, several AI tools gain prominence, blah, blah, blah. Lists out 10 different tools from very clear sources, none of which I will probably ever click through to. Because, like, seriously, like I have
Yeah.
the name of the tools, I'm then going to go search. So, like, this is the exact type of top of the funnel query typically you might be targeting to really get someone's eyes on your website. Obviously, we talked about for over a year now, that kind of strategy is going the way of the dodo, but like this is very clearly giving me the answer I have and enough information to ask follow-ups with links that I'm probably not going to be clicking through to nearly as often.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like the step toward the one and like with the one answer that you get from voice. So
Mhm.
again, like if
Right.
let's say advanced voice, let's say advanced voice, which I don't know if it has search built in or not. I would guess maybe it does. I haven't tried that yet. But let's say that you become reliant on voice interface and like, 6, 12, 18 months from now, you're basically just either talking to Apple Intelligence or advanced voice or Google Assistant, whatever, when you need something. Well, now your world is living within whatever bubble that company's
Mhm.
algorithm is deciding the right answer is to things,
Right.
whether it's what you're going to buy or what you're going to believe or, just real time information. You've now, like the beauty of Google's link strategy is a diversity of places to click through to form your own opinions and points of views and beliefs.
Mhm.
If we become too reliant on a single interface and assume that whatever it presents to us is right, and in the case of voice, you're only getting one, um, then you start to run the risk that we're like really forming people's beliefs and opinions in the light of whoever's controlling the algorithms or the models that present that information. Which again, you could get into all kinds of ramifications around that, like who's building the models, what government is supporting those models,
Mhm.
things like that. So it's infinitely fascinating. Like there's so many threads you could pull from a simple. And this is, but again, part of our goal with this show is, yeah, ChatGPT search, awesome. But like, let's step back for a minute and think about like the bigger implications here and the questions that it opens up that we don't necessarily have the answers to, but it's good to not just take the technology on its surface and assume it's, all great. They got to like think about the other angles here.
So to kind of wrap this topic up, like, oof, how bad is this for Google? Like, not only does this come out, but in the past week, we got reports that Meta is trying to put its own AI search engine into Meta AI to explicitly reduce reliance on Google and Microsoft. Perplexity, despite some legal challenges, obviously, is kind of full steam ahead as an alternate search option, though they may get hurt even more by this. They're going to start charging for ads. Like, how worried am I if I'm the Google search team right now?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult question. We have, Bing has certainly seen improvements. So I'm just like the current, from what I can see on Stat Counter, Google owns 90% of the search market. Bing's around 4%.
Mhm.
Um, but Bing has gained ground. I think we talk a lot about perplexity because we all live, and a lot of our listeners live in sort of this AI bubble, and it's perplexity seems like it's much larger than it probably really is,
Right.
just because we talk about it a lot, but it doesn't even show up in like the top 6 search engines, 7 search engines, things like that. So their market share is, I think, well below a half a percentage point. Now it's growing.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, like, I think part of this is an interface question. Like, what is the interface of the future? Will 2, 3, 4 years from now, are we largely going to rely on voice?
Mhm.
Are we going to just live within our language models and they become the primary interface to everything and it's connected to everything? And in which case, then, you could see this being a major threat. So I would imagine that the teams at Google are kind of playing this out as like, what are the possibilities here? What's the impact on our ad revenue? How does this change if adoption of ChatGPT continues to skyrocket? And I don't know what their market share is in language models, but I mean, the study we did where we asked our users, like 1,800 people on our State of Marketing AI report this year, I think it was like 55% said they had ChatGPT licenses at work, and that was by
Yeah.
far the number one when we compared to um, Copilot and Gemini. Uh, Now that may flip in the enterprise market, like the big enterprises, maybe Copilot's higher adoption. But yeah, I think there's just too many unknowns right now about where this goes, where search goes, where interfaces go, where language model adoption goes, and that'll kind of dictate this. But I'm sure people at Google are paying attention and playing this out of possible paths that this could go.